Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive? We're going to be looking at the spiritual side of highly sensitive people today.
You bet. It looks like you sent in some really interesting sources.
We did, yeah, we're excited to jump in.
All right, well, let's get to it. Looks like you're interested in some pretty big questions.
Definitely.
Like, do HSPs have a special role to play in society?
Mm-hmm.
Even a spiritual one,
Yeah.
maybe. And what about all those moments that feel like they're, divinely orchestrated or something?
Right.
Do HSPs experience more of those? We'll be exploring all that and more in this deep dive.
Using our own experiences as a springboard.
Exactly.
So one of the first things that really jumped out at me from these sources was this idea of HSPs as a priest class.
Oh, yeah.
What do you make of that?
Hmm. It's a powerful concept.
It is.
And it makes sense when you think about how anthropologists describe ritual leaders.
Okay.
They often create these really transformative experiences in sacred spaces,
Right.
places set apart from the everyday world.
So are you saying that HSPs are basically creating sacred spaces wherever they go?
Well, think about it. Have you ever noticed how certain places just feel different?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a favorite park bench or even a corner of your own home where you feel this sense of peace and calm.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible that you're instinctively creating that sacred space just by being you.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. But it makes sense.
Yeah.
Especially for HSPs who are so turned in to their surroundings.
Exactly. And this sensitivity could also explain why HSPs seem to grapple with those big existential questions more than others.
Right.
The ones that science can't quite answer.
You mean like the meaning of life and all that?
Exactly. It's funny because I do find myself thinking about those things a lot.
Yeah,
Sometimes I wonder if it's just me being an HSP,
I do too.
where you're definitely not alone.
Yeah.
The source material actually mentions how HSPs often feel drawn to explore these deeper questions,
Mm.
even in a world that's becoming increasingly skeptical of anything spiritual.
Right. So how do HSPs navigate that tension between wanting to explore their spirituality and living in a world that often dismisses those kinds of experiences?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And the source material suggests that many HSPs find a way to balance both.
Okay.
They might not subscribe to any specific religion
Right.
or dogma,
Right.
but they're still seeking out those direct personal experiences that connect them to something bigger than themselves.
It's like they're creating their own spiritual path.
Yes.
One that feels authentic and true to them.
Precisely. And that reminds me of Viktor Frankl's story.
Oh, yeah?
He was a psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps.
Wow.
Yeah, his story is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I remember reading about him.
Absolutely. And what's remarkable is that even in those unimaginable circumstances, he found meaning.
He did.
He found it in helping others and in the love he held for his wife.
That's so inspiring.
It really is.
It shows you that even in the darkest of times, you can still find something to hold on to, something that gives you strength.
And his story ties in beautifully with this idea of HSPs seeking wholeness.
Okay.
It's not about ignoring the pain or pretending everything is perfect.
Right.
It's about embracing the full spectrum of human experience,
Okay.
the light and the shadow, the good and the bad.
So how does someone actually go about seeking that wholeness? Is there like a roadmap or something?
Well, the source material doesn't offer a step-by-step guide, but it does highlight the importance of acknowledging both our strengths and our shadow sides,
Okay.
those parts of ourselves that we might try to hide or deny.
You mean like those flaws we all have?
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's not about dwelling on them or beating ourselves up about them,
Right.
but rather about accepting them as part of who we are.
Okay.
The source actually shares another really inspiring story.
Oh.
Have you ever heard of Eddie Hillison?
The name rings a bell, but I can't place it.
Well, she lived through World War II and found solace in the writings of Carl Jung and the poetry of Rilke. It just goes to show that art and spirituality can be incredible sources of strength, especially during difficult times.
Those are some pretty heavy hitters to turn to for comfort.
They are.
But it makes sense, especially for HSPs who are often drawn to creative and introspective pursuits.
Right. And it reinforces this idea that finding wholeness is not just an individual pursuit,
Yeah.
it's something that can benefit society as a whole.
Oh, wow.
When we embrace our own complexities,
Mm-hmm.
we become more understanding and compassionate towards others.
I love that. So we've talked about sacred spaces and seeking wholeness.
Yes.
What other spiritual themes emerge from these sources?
Well, one that really stands out is this idea of synchronicities.
Okay.
Those meaningful coincidences that seem to happen to HSPs more often than others.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever experienced anything like that?
Oh, totally. I have this one story that I still can't explain.
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
But first, let's talk a bit about what these synchronicities might mean. The source material mentions Carl Jung's concept of a causal connecting principle.
Okay.
It's a way of understanding how seemingly unrelated events can actually be connected in ways we don't fully grasp.
So are we talking about destiny or something?
Not necessarily. It's
Okay.
more about recognizing that there might be this underlying intelligence
Yay.
or order to the universe,
Okay.
even if we can't always see it.
Right.
And HSPs with their heightened sensitivity might be more attuned to these subtle connections.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
It's like we're picking up on signals that other people might miss.
exactly. And this sensitivity isn't limited to the waking world.
Oh.
The source material also delves into the power of dreams
Hmm.
and active imagination,
Right.
suggesting that these can be powerful tools for connecting with our unconscious mind.
You're totally right. I've always had really vivid dreams.
Yeah,
Sometimes they feel more real than actual life.
that's fascinating. And it's something that many HSTs report.
Yeah.
The source even shares a story about a woman named Deborah who experienced a series of synchronicities and even encounters with beings that she perceived as angels or guides.
Whoa, that's incredible. I've never had an experience quite like that.
Yeah.
But I can definitely see how someone might interpret these things as spiritual messages.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And it speaks to the profound experiences that some HSPs have, experiences that can really challenge our conventional understanding of reality.
Right.
But it's important to approach these experiences with both curiosity and discernment,
Yeah.
especially given the influence of charismatic spiritual figures.
Right, because not every spiritual experience is necessarily positive, is it?
That's an important point.
Yeah.
The source material actually cautions about the potential pitfalls of getting caught up in someone else's spiritual beliefs
Okay.
without doing your own research and soul searching.
So it's like a reminder to balance our openness
Yes.
with a healthy dose of skepticism, to be aware of the shadow side of spirituality, even while honoring that genuine yearning for something more that so many people feel.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance.
Right.
And speaking of balance, the source also shares the story of Harper,
Okay.
a highly intellectual HSP who was also struggling with depression and skepticism.
Wow.
He had this really intense experience involving a seemingly predicted car accident
Oh my gosh.
that shook his entire worldview.
Wow, that sounds intense. So what happened? Did this experience completely transform him? Did he become a full-blown believer in the supernatural?
Well, it definitely shook him up,
Yeah.
and it highlights how these profound spiritual experiences can be really overwhelming, especially for HSPs who are already so sensitive.
Right?
But the key takeaway, according to the source, is the importance of self-compassion.
So what do you mean by that?
It's about allowing ourselves to process these experiences at our own pace,
Okay.
without judgment or pressure to conform to any preconceived notions. And that can be especially important for HSPs whose spiritual journeys might be more complex and nuanced.
It's like giving ourselves permission to be messy and confused, to embrace the mystery without feeling like we need to have all the answers right away.
Exactly. It's about honoring the process.
This has been so insightful. We've covered a lot of ground already, from sacred spaces to synchronicities.
We have.
But before we get too carried away, why don't we take a pause here? We'll pick up right where we left off in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good to me. There's still plenty more to explore. Sounds good to me. There's still plenty more to explore.
Welcome back. Before the break, you were going to share a story about a synchronicity you experienced.
Oh, right. I'd love to hear it. Seems like you've been pondering these kinds of experiences yourself.
Definitely. Okay, so this happened a few years ago. I was going through a really tough time, feeling lost and unsure about my direction in life. And I remember thinking, I wish there was some kind of guidance to help me figure things out.
I think we've all been there at some point,
Yeah.
wanting a little nudge from the universe.
Exactly. Anyway, later that day, I was walking home from work, feeling pretty down, when I noticed this little bookstore I'd never seen before. Something drew me in. So I decided to browse around. And wouldn't you know it, I stumbled upon a book with the most amazing title. It was written just for me.
Wow, that's amazing. What was the title?
Well, I'd rather not share the exact title because it was very specific to my situation at the time. But it was something about finding your purpose and trusting your intuition. And the weirdest part is that the book was tucked away on a shelf, almost hidden. It felt like it was meant for me to find.
That's a classic synchronicity. And it speaks to how these experiences can often feel like little gifts from the universe, especially when we're open to receiving them.
Absolutely. Reading that book felt like a turning point for me. It gave me the courage to start making some changes in my life, to trust my gut and pursue the things that felt truly aligned with my soul.
Your story reminds me of something the source material emphasized, how HSPs might be more receptive to these kinds of synchronicities, these glimpses into the non-material realm.
So, are you saying HSPs are basically walking magnets for spiritual experiences?
Not exactly. It's more about having a heightened sensitivity to the subtle energies and patterns that are always present around us. Some HSPs might experience this through vivid prophetic dreams, while others might be drawn to practices like meditation or energy work. It really varies from person to person.
It's like we have a more porous boundary between the conscious and unconscious mind. We're more in tune with our intuition, and maybe that makes us more likely to notice these subtle signals from the universe.
Exactly. And this sensitivity can be a source of both creativity and spiritual exploration. The source material talks about how many HSPs find themselves drawn to art music writing or other forms of expression that allow them to channel these deeper experiences.
That makes so much sense. It's like HSPs are translating the language of the soul into a form that others can connect with.
Beautifully put. And the source also emphasizes the importance of HSPs recognizing and honoring their own unique spiritual path. It cautions against blindly following dogma or seeking external validation, encouraging them to trust their own inner compass.
It's like we're each on our own hero's journey, and there's no one right way to do it. We have to find what resonates with us, what feels true and authentic.
And speaking of finding what resonates, the source does mention a few potential downsides to spiritual seeking, especially for HSPs. Have you ever felt vulnerable to manipulation or exploitation in that realm?
Oh, definitely. Especially when you're first starting to explore spirituality, it's easy to get caught up in someone else's charisma or teachings without questioning whether it's actually a good fit for you.
Absolutely. It's crucial for HSPs to cultivate a strong sense of self-awareness and healthy boundaries. If something feels off, trust your intuition, and don't be afraid to seek support from trusted sources.
This reminds me of something we talked about earlier, this whole idea of HSPs as the priest class. It's a powerful metaphor, but it also raises some questions about the role HSPs might play in a world that often seems to devalue sensitivity.
That's a great point. It's almost like HSPs are being called to embody a different kind of leadership, one that's rooted in empathy, intuition, and a deep connection to the soul.
It's about creating space for others to connect with their own inner wisdom and find their own unique path to meaning and purpose rather than imposing beliefs or agendas.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it brings us back to that idea of partnership, the synergy between those who excel in the warrior king realm of action and those who tend the soul spirit realm.
It's like acknowledging that we need both the doers and the dreamers, the
Yeah.
pragmatists and the visionaries.
And HSPs, with their sensitivity and awareness, can be incredible bridges between those two worlds.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the theoretical side of things, but are there any practical tips in the source material for how HSPs can cultivate their spiritual potential?
Absolutely. One suggestion that really stood out was keeping a spiritual journal.
Mm.
It's a way to document your experiences, track your insights, and honor those whispers from your soul.
That's a great idea. It's like creating a sacred space within yourself where you can explore your thoughts and feelings without judgment.
Exactly. And the source also encourages HSPs to find creative outlets for expressing their spirituality, whether it's through writing, music art, dance, or any other form that feels aligned.
It's about letting your creativity flow freely without censorship or self-criticism.
Beautifully said. It's also important to remember that you're not alone on this journey. The source highlights the importance of finding supportive communities where you can share your experiences, connect with like-minded individuals, and feel a sense of belonging.
There's something so powerful about finding your tribe, those people who really get you, who understand your sensitivities and honor your gifts.
Absolutely. And these communities can provide a safe space for HSPs to explore their spirituality without fear of judgment or ridicule.
One thing that I think is especially important for HSPs to remember is that self-care is not selfish. It's actually essential for our well-being.
Right. The source emphasizes the importance of prioritizing practices that nourish your body, mind, and spirit. Whether it's spending time in nature, engaging in creative pursuits, or simply carving out quiet time for reflection and relaxation.
It's about recognizing that our sensitivity is a gift, but it also requires us to be more intentional about how we manage our energy and create a supportive environment for ourselves.
Yeah, and when we care for ourselves, we're better equipped to care for others and share our gifts with the world. Speaking of which, I'm curious, have you been applying any of these insights to your own life?
I have. Since starting this deep dive, I've actually been experimenting with keeping a spiritual journal, and I've been making a conscious effort to create more sacred space in my home.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're really embracing these ideas and finding what works for you.
I am. And it's been so rewarding. It's like a whole new world has opened up.
Yeah. That's wonderful to hear. And it speaks to the profound potential that lies within each of us, especially HSPs, who are naturally attuned to these subtle realms of experience.
I couldn't agree more. This has been such an enriching conversation. But before we get too carried away, why don't we take another quick pause? When we come back, we'll wrap up our exploration of this fascinating topic and leave you with some final thoughts to ponder.
Sounds like a plan. I'm looking forward to tying everything together.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the spirituality of highly sensitive people.
Yes, we've explored some really fascinating concepts, personal stories, and it seems like you're on this path of self-discovery, and we're here to help illuminate it.
You're right. And building on what we've already talked about, I am particularly interested in how HSPs can navigate a world that doesn't always understand or value their unique gifts.
Yeah, that's a great observation. It can be tough sometimes,
They can.
feeling like you have to dim your light or pretend to be someone you're not.
Right.
The source material actually talks about this tendency, especially in Western cultures,
Mm-hmm.
to undervalue sensitivity and spiritual pursuits.
Yeah.
There's this unspoken message that being sensitive is a weakness,
Right.
that practicality trumps exploring your inner world.
And for HSPs, that message can be particularly harmful.
Absolutely.
It's like we're constantly being told to toughen up or
Right.
to suppress our emotions.
But here's the thing. Sensitivity is not a liability.
Right.
It's a strength. It allows us to connect deeply with others, to perceive nuances, to experience the world with an intensity that others might miss.
It's like having a superpower that lets you see the world in high definition.
Exactly. And when we combine that sensitivity with a genuine curiosity about the spiritual dimensions of life, it's like opening a door to a hidden garden, a place where intuition flourishes, creativity blossoms, and we can access profound wisdom and compassion.
It's almost like HSPs are the keepers of that garden, tending to its beauty and sharing its gifts with the world.
I love that analogy.
Ah.
And it reminds me of another important point from the source material, this idea of embracing our inferior function, the aspect of ourselves that we tend to neglect or even fear.
So for HSPs, that might be things like being more assertive, getting organized, or even just being more practical. Those things can feel really challenging sometimes.
Absolutely. But the source suggests that by consciously engaging with those less developed parts of ourselves, we can actually achieve greater wholeness and balance.
Okay.
It's like expanding our comfort zone and embracing the fullness of who we are, imperfections and all.
It's like we're integrating all the pieces of ourselves, the light and the shadow, into a more complete and authentic whole.
Beautifully put. And that process of integration is a testament to the transformative power of spiritual growth.
Yeah.
It's not about becoming perfect or achieving some kind of enlightened state, but about becoming more fully ourselves, embracing our strengths and weaknesses, and living a life that feels aligned with our deepest values.
This has been such a profound and insightful journey. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to thank you for sharing your wisdom and for guiding us through these fascinating sources.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, the journey of spiritual exploration is deeply personal, but you're not alone on this path.
Exactly. If you're feeling called to explore your own spirituality, trust your intuition. Start a spiritual journal, connect with like-minded individuals, or simply spend some time in quiet reflection.
And above all, embrace your sensitivity as the incredible gift that it is. The world needs your empathy, your creativity, your ability to see the magic in the everyday.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the spirituality of highly sensitive people. Until next time, may your journey be filled with wonder, insight, and the unwavering belief in your own extraordinary potential.